It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. My name is Bill Himmelstein, also known as Billy Boy. I founded a commercial real estate consulting firm about 13 years ago that focuses on representing the end user of real estate, so the tenant, the buyer, and the seller. We have a real in-depth approach just about getting to know the people, understanding their culture, and making sure we find the right space that's going to support our clients in the attraction and retention of top talent. A big part of my education has come from a couple of the panelists here, Maury and Larry and a few other folks, just about the value of paying it forward and supporting the growth of other people's businesses in the hopes that they'll do it back to you. And it's been incredibly eye-opening just to see the results of what can happen when you focus on uplifting others and supporting others, and to see what happens to your own business. So I'm just been very grateful to learn from some of the best and put those lessons into practice.
Thanks, Bill. So I'm Maury Elstein. The company is Maury Connect. I've really been using this process that I think is so important for all of us to adapt, and that's thinking about the other person first, understanding that business people and people that are C-level, presidents and owners, managing partners, CEOs of companies, go to bed every night and wake up every morning thinking about growing their business. That's their commonality. And so when we meet people, if we think first about them, their business, and how we can support their business and make them understand that that's one of the assets that they get when they're working with us, I think you'll find a very big change in the kind of way people present themselves and learn about you. My company is simply an exclusive club that allows presidents and owners and managing partners to pay a subscription, a 12-month payment that allows them a specific amount of introductions, 15 right now, and that's a minimum, to the people that they want to meet who are the presidents and owners and decision makers in their companies. Over the 40-some years that I've been in Chicago, I've had the privilege of interviewing over 9,600 presidents and owners of companies, and spent enough time with them to understand what they do and the people they like to meet and what their business is all about. And so that's kind of what Maury Connect is all about. That's me. So we'd like to get started talking a little bit about what the company does. And Todd's put together and helped put together a list of questions that I think may have some value to each of you. So Todd, why don't we just get started?
Great, thanks, Maury. And I'm going to go right back to you with the very first question. Can you give us an example of how paying it forward and making introductions works? Kind of the way that you've done it and the way that you've seen it be successful.
Yeah. So basically, and I started out a great deal of these meetings with the same idea. So I'd like each of you, whether it's with us now or whether you do it later on, to take a piece of paper, 8.5 by 10, draw a line down the center of that paper. And on both sides, I'd like you to take an inventory of all the decision makers you know, whether they're presidents, owners, managing partners, COOs, CEOs. Make that list out and put all the names down of people that you know, both sides of the paper. Under their names, I'd like you to put the name of the company. And under the name of the company, I'd like you to put what those people do, what the company does. Now, the significance of this little action is that, number one, you really start thinking about the people you know, what their titles are, how they make decisions, and how it can be of value to you. Then when you've got all these names down, I'd like you to take a pencil or a pen and draw a line between each of those people and the other people that they would like to meet on the list that you put together. You now have a valuable tool that you may never thought about and may never have used, and that is the people you know, your human assets. If you then decide to make introductions, you really are using the people you know to grow their business, grow your business. It's not often that we wake up in the morning and say to yourself, gee, you know, Tim would like to meet John, or Linda would like to meet Debbie, and actually make those introductions. And it will be mind-boggling to you to see the reaction that you get. Nobody likes anything better than a helping hand to meet good people that can help their business grow. And you'll find the real value of making those introductions and paying it forward. So the only thing I would add to that is in my daily business, there are two questions I ask everybody that I meet, and I find a way to interject it in the meeting. Simply, how can I help you or support you in growing your business? And who do I know that you would like to meet? As Bill well knows, those two questions provide opportunities for people to make introductions back to you. And you're dealing with the most important thing each of us has every day of our life, working life, and that's growing your business. So I'd like to ask you all to please take that little test, take that list up, draw those lines between people. You've now got an excellent reason to call somebody back who you haven't talked to in 3 months, or you never made it, but you know there's business potential and you want to call and reconnect with them. So please use this exercise, because in a way, that's what this whole meeting is about. It's about connecting. It's about understanding that networks don't mean a damn unless you make them active. And it's about understanding the needs of other people first. Next question, Todd.
All right, the next question actually moves to Larry. Larry, is there a right time to ask someone who is a prospect, a pre-client, how you can support them and who is important for them to meet, the type of connections they'd like to have?
That's a good question. And I would say the right time is in that first meeting. And I think it's your pre-client or your trusted advisor you're networking with, or it's your channel partner. I think it's that first meeting. And so I was speaking to a group and I came up with this phrase: if you lead with yourself, you're going to leave with yourself. So I know a lot of us like to show up and throw up and talk a lot about ourselves. And if we could shift that to that other person, and I think, we want to learn about their business, but if we learn about them personally and their families, how they've adapted to COVID professionally and personally, we could learn some ways that we can help them. And so I think LinkedIn's great. I speak about LinkedIn. I'm LinkedIn Larry, but I think that's a great tool to have them look at my network and pick out the people they want to know and make it realistic. Pick out 5 to 10 people, or tell me the companies you want to know. But I think that first meeting is a good time to ask, like Maury said, how can I help you? But sometimes you can guide them. I spoke with a gentleman yesterday in Utah, very accomplished guy, is publishing his 15th book. He's a self-made millionaire. How am I going to help this guy? He's successful. And we were talking, and I learned about his daughter was looking to be, a flight attendant. And I said, I can help your daughter as she's trying to look into that new career path. He said, really, that would be outstanding. Well, imagine you help your pre-client with their children or a significant other. It's powerful. And I did that, because I wanted to, not because I had to. And he looked at me in a very different light. So hopefully that makes sense.
If I can expand on that, Larry, the different light is you move yourself from vendor category into partner category. When you do that, you're no longer trying to sell them something. You're trying to partner with them to support the growth of their business. That's what Maury has talked about that for a long time, is that's how you separate yourself from being a vendor and trying to sell them to being a partner and trying to support them.
And I'm going to add something to that as well. So if you've got a business and you've got a client who's looking for your type of support and service, and he's got 4 people that he's talked to and he's got to make a decision, and you're the only person that said to him, how can I support your business growth? Who do I know that you do not know and want to meet? You're the one that stands out in those 4 people when he's deciding who he's going to hire or who she's going to hire. So it really makes a difference. You can really put your mark on the person that you're trying to get business from by paying it forward and trying to offer them help and support in growing their business.
Let me connect that to the next question here, which is very close, but maybe from a different perspective. And this is for you, Tricia. What do you see the value of paying it forward with these types of connections?
Yeah, it's a good kind of parlay into the next question. So I just see so much value in paying it forward with introductions. I mean, there's obviously a monetary value, which I frankly focus on less. I'll explain that in a second. But I mean, there's also just a good energy, reason to do it. I personally love making introductions and connecting the dots and knowing that by introducing two good people, good things are going to happen. It gives me energy. I just love it because I know the impact that introductions have had on my life and my business. And so, I will say my younger self would have said, it's absolutely not who you know, it's what you know. But my wiser older self knows that it's absolutely who you know and what you know. And so if you focus on kind of helping others connect the dots, it just naturally, like, good things will come around from that. And so that's why I focus less on the monetary and just focus on helping people instead, because then it just creates goodness all around.
Greg, for you along those lines, how's it changed your business?
I get most of my business through my network, so it's changed my business significantly. I mean, having a great network, I always tell people, you might meet 10, 20, 30 people, and only a fraction of those people will be people that are givers like you are and are people that align with what you do and they're living your world. But it's worth it. I mean, those people can be lifelong friends. They can add so much trust to your relationships. I mean, you get into a relationship, it's no longer a cold situation. They've already developed trust. So when they bring you in, you now have trust going in the door. And that makes all the difference in how you're going to be perceived, how you're going to move forward, what kind of success you're going to have. And as I tell my people who introduce me in my network, one thing you can count on me is I will be focused on your person's agenda. So I'm always going to make you look good because I'm going to help them in ways I don't get paid in. And to me, that's how you start a relationship.
We're going to shift gears just a little bit here with the next question. Bill, is it ever an issue, or when you're trying to get business from someone, whether it's a prospect or an existing client, you're trying to expand your reach, is it ever a challenge or a problem to ask them, how can I support you, or how can I help you, as the introductory kind of engagement with them?
No, I mean, I think if you start off the relationship with a transactional approach, it can be a little bit of a curveball to then all of a sudden take the relationship-based approach by asking what you can do to support them. What I have found is that, it's never appropriate to ask somebody for an introduction until you've supported them. I'm a big believer in filling the bucket, filling the well first, before I circle back and say, hey, Larry, I see that you're connected to so-and-so. How well do you know them? And can you make an introduction for me? I don't want to be, and no offense to the anyone on the phone that might be from Northwestern Mutual, but their approach is, hi, Larry, nice to meet you. I see, here's a list of 12 people that I'd like to meet. It's like, whoa, hold on a second, slow down. I don't even know you. We have no trust that's built. But I think by leading with giving, you build that foundation of trust. And in theory, a lot of us here are getting introduced by someone they already trust. So we've got more of a foundation of trust. And then once you've given and you can say, hey, how'd that introduction to Tricia go? Isn't she wonderful? Or, whatever the introduction might be, then you can circle back by saying, here's somebody I noticed in your LinkedIn. How well do you know them? But in terms of, asking someone, not everybody, John Rue, a friend of ours, has this personality profile test he calls DISC. And, not everyone's going to fit, be responsive to, why do you want to help me? They might be skeptical. They might, be distrustful of that. So yeah, not everyone's going to respond well. But I think a vast majority of the population, if they see that you're coming from a genuine place and wanting to support the growth of their business, as that's part of your DNA, they tend to open up and start talking a little bit more about their business or their personal life, as Larry mentioned about maybe their child needing an internship or whatever it might be. But most people I have found are quite receptive to the question, what can I do to best support the growth of your business? How can I help you?
Great. Maury, I want to circle back to you and kind of get more of the foundation of this kind of methodology that we're talking about. How long have you been making introductions, and do you believe it can be done, this kind of connecting can be done by anyone?
There are a few things that I think make it very difficult for that person who doesn't have a network to take advantage of this process. I mean, obviously, the more decision makers you know, the more value you have to the people that you're making introductions to. And I think that I've been doing this most of my life. I don't think I was as conscious about it as I am today. I had a very large company that I sold 20 years ago. Thought I was going to retire. My wife didn't think I was going to retire. So I continued to work. And I found that the most significant thing I had was my network. And so today, I think that it's almost a frame of mind. It's where you are. When I meet people today, as soon as I find out what they do, I start thinking about the people that I know that would be good for them to meet. It's incredible when you meet someone across the table and someplace in the conversation, they tell you what they do, and you look back at them and say, boy, there's some people I really would like to introduce you to that I think would like to meet. Boy, have you changed the relationship almost immediately. There's nobody who's going to take a phone call from you faster than that person who you told you had introductions that you could make for them. So get in that habit, meet somebody, start thinking in your head, who do I know that person would like to meet? And then go ahead and try to make that introduction, make it work for you.
Larry, do you think that this approach and essentially what Maury just described can change your business? And how has it, paying it forward, really changed your personal business life in the way that you've done things?
Well, I think it's changed my business life. It's changed my personal life. I think what I've done for myself is position myself differently with everyone I meet with. And, like when I met Maury 10 plus years ago, I found I got a guy, right? So Maury has just a couple more years on me. So his network's a little bit bigger. But Maury's was that go-to. It was nice to have that person in my network. So what I've done to change my business and position myself differently, even as a business leader, is to position myself as an indispensable resource. So when I meet with people, I say, you know what, Steve Brown, put everyone else you deal with over here and put me here as this indispensable resource. You can come to me for my finance and accounting services, but when something comes up with your wife or your child or some business peer or client, you don't know where to go, I want to be that indispensable resource to go to. And that has changed the perception of who I am. Like everyone's been talking about, do you want to be a vendor or do you want to be a trusted relationship and resource? So paying it forward, thinking about the other person, positioning yourself as a go-to. So people come to you for other things beyond what you do in your business, will deepen the relationship and make it impossible for a competing force to come in and unseat you.
Thanks, Larry. Tricia, for you, what kind of got you started making introductions and connecting people? And has that really been a big part of your business growth in your firm?
Yeah, so back in 2009, I was working in-house and I knew it wasn't the path for me. So, as a lawyer working at one company, business development wasn't a thing for me. I didn't need to bring in clients. I was just supporting one business. So in January 2010, I started my own law firm, but I had no idea like how to bring in clients, where to find clients. Like I didn't know the first thing. So I just started talking to various colleagues of mine and letting them know that I was starting a business law firm. And I was focused specifically on finding tech companies because that's really where a lot of my experience was. And so before I knew it, I was having like 12 to 15 meetings a day. Each person was introducing me to 5 to 10 people. I still to this day feel so much gratitude for those people that made all of those introductions for me, who were so good at connecting the dots, who really led me into this tech community that I didn't even know existed. I mean, introductions have been such a huge part of my business growth. But as my time has become more limited, I put a process in place so that way we could still make as many introductions as when I had more time to focus on it. Now we've actually hired a manager of client relations and strategic partnerships, and it's part of her role that she basically will be meeting with clients and strategic partners and making sure that we're making as many introductions as we possibly can, because that's how we can help. If we all help each other, we're all going to move forward much more quickly. And I really think that that is attributed to our growth year over year, not only because we have an amazing team, but because the introductions coming in and going out have just been a major contributor, and we wouldn't have been able to grow year over year without that.
That's great. Greg, along those lines for you, obviously the intent is to try to establish relationships, grow your business, but how important is the paying it forward aspect of that?
Well, I mean, to me, it's all about that, because I can't tell you how many people I've helped over the years, obviously, again, in areas I don't get paid in, that may not be the person that actually becomes a really strong relationship. I personally, I give without, expecting anything really in return. I just know that karma has happened to work for me when I do this, and I've been doing this my whole life. So it just seems to come around. I don't know how that happens, but it naturally happens. And so a lot of times it's not that initial person that you meet, but it could be the next person they introduce you to that becomes the person that is just phenomenal for your life in so many different ways. So it is just, you just keep doing it and you get better at it and you refine it. You get more specific. I think, as Trisha mentioned, time gets more tight as you go by. So you're really, one of the common things I ask people if they're thinking about other people that might be good for me. Sure, I have my demographics of what fits great into my world, but more importantly, I only want givers in my world. And not that I'm expecting them to give me anything. I want people with that kind of mentality. So that's something I've learned in doing this. And it really cuts down on you getting many people that are, a lot of them unfortunately can just be users. At least that's the mentality that these people are coming in with. And that really just creates a much better network for you.
So I'd like to make a couple of comments on what Greg said. Number one, and my favorite 3 words are you never know. You just never know what a meeting's going to turn out. And I agree 100%. Sometimes the person you meet is not going to be the person you need to meet, but that person may lead you to the right person. The other thing I'd like to say is that, some of us delegate introductions to other people in our operation, and they have a great purpose because they can do a tremendous amount of weeding. But if you want to meet presidents and owners of companies, you've got to find time to make yourself available. Most people who are in top positions in companies want to meet their peers because they understand that there's a mutual give and take in that relationship, and those people know the people that they'd like to meet. So while I try to spend my time judiciously, there are times when other people make introductions for me, but for the most part, I know that I've got to go to that meeting because it's the president of the company that they want to meet. So when you can delegate, because as Trisha said, you get to the point where you just don't have time. Bill has done an incredible job of doing this, and he actually leads his life and his business so that he's delegated a lot of responsibilities in his company to give him the time to go ahead and continue to make these growth introductions. So all of the panel here, represents the philosophy of giving it, paying it forward, and understanding the power of introduction. So I'm delighted to have them join us today.
Maury, I remember when I first was meeting you and we'd be in groups together and people would complain, well, Maury, that's your job to make introductions and you have all the time in the world to just do that. I was thinking, I want that to be my job. I want to get everything else off my plate so I can serve as what Larry would call a connected connector. Because when you can do that, your business is going to grow. You can hire people to execute. You can hire people to, do the admin work. You can hire people to do the work that your company provides, but it's very difficult to find the person that can be that connected connector, which ultimately ends up being a rainmaker and bringing work into the firm. And so when I saw people, on the one side of the table were saying, oh, well, Maury, you get to spend all day doing that. And I thought to myself, I want to figure out how I can spend all day doing that. And then I worked to delegate and create a business where my main function is to think about how I can support others and think about how I can connect others. I do want to make one quick comment about what Greg was saying. My giving and my connecting, it's not necessarily just a universal, anybody who calls gets my support, or I walk around the street saying, who needs help? I'm very charitable and I'm very giving with my time and my money. But for my business, I take a more strategic approach to supporting those that I believe could support me back. Now, like Greg and like the other panelists, I'm not doing with an absolute expectation that it'll be returned. However, if there isn't value returned, I will stop supporting that person. Any relationship, for it to work, has got to be a two-way street. And so for me, I try to find people where, maybe I'm not going to be their broker, but they could introduce me to good people. Or, I feel like bringing value to my clients through someone else's service, that's the price of entry. Everyone should be good at what they do. The question is, can you go a step beyond that and bring value to your clients and your partners in other ways, like connecting them to potential clients? And so I'm a little more strategic in where I commit my time and my resources, because I want to make sure that if they are going to return the favor, then that there's an opportunity for them to do that. So I am it's not just an altruistic, let's help anyone I can possibly find. It's really about, like Greg did mention, he wants to be connected to other givers, other like-minded individuals, and I agree with that wholeheartedly.
If I can jump in quickly, one thing I would say is, we're all trying to grow our businesses and our relationships. So if we are paying it forward, we're establishing relationships, because there's going to be times where you need that favor. You need help personally or for your business. You want to get connected to a client. So if you've built this great inner circle of relationships where you've been a giver, you've paid it forward, and now you need access to a president or a decision maker, or you need to help a child or a friend, it's much easier. But I talked to a lot of people that work so hard that they're just not building those relationships, and then they need those favors and people are saying no. And some of you have found that when you go into transition that you don't have that strong of network. Maybe you weren't so giving, you just worked so hard. So it goes both ways. And so I think we need to pay it forward to also in the future or near future, we may need that help, that favor or connection to a potential client.
I want to follow up with kind of this course of discussion with a question for Bill that's sort of connected to it. Maury mentioned before his 3 favorite words of "you never know." For you, as you've built up an extensive network like this, how often does something happen that maybe you didn't expect coming out of the connections that you make?
That's a good question. I mean, I think what I've learned over the years from the Maurys and the Larrys of the world is that while you may not expect it, you see it happening. And so my industry is very unique in that, every year you start over. Every year you're at zero. You have no idea really how many clients are going to reach out or how much opportunity you're going to have. And I think the biggest change for me, a couple of years into practicing this pay it forward, giver's gain approach, I stopped worrying about how my year was going to look. I knew that because of the relationships I've built and because of the wells I've filled and the buckets I've filled for other people, that every year was going to be a good year. I just went into each year with more confidence, knowing that my network, whom I've supported to the full extent that I can, was going to support me back. And the best results I can share with you in terms of numbers, the typical commercial real estate broker does about 5, maybe 7 transactions a year, and a busy one will do 10. I do about 40 a year, which is 4 times busier than the busy brokers. And it's all because of, building a system that's based around doing what I can to support the growth of other people's companies. And with that, I know going into each year, while my revenue is not set for the year, like say a Greg Elstein knows he has a baseline from the insurance policies he sold in the past. And if he can grow that during the year, he's going to do even better. For me, I walk in knowing that there's going to be people like Steve Brown and other folks on this call that are going to say, hey, Bill, here's somebody I want you to talk to. They've got an opportunity. They need your support. And so that's probably been the biggest difference maker for me, is it really takes out a lot of the worry of, will I be able to sell enough to make a living this year?
So Todd, one thing I'd like to add that may be important is the 3 words you never know are really just the justification in the fact that you meet people and you really never know. You don't know who they know. I've met people at a ball game and then told them what I do, asked them how I could help them, left the ball game, didn't know if I was ever going to hear from them again. And 2 days later, I get a call that says, Maury, I've been thinking about you and what you do. I'd like to introduce you to. So sometimes those people you meet have connections that you couldn't possibly get if you hadn't met them. So there is a value in meeting people who aren't always going to give you business, but who are great connectors because they can make introductions that you can't get any other way and you can't get from anybody else. And that really is what we're talking about today. We're talking about the value of your network and how it pays you forward, some cases in ways you never dreamt of.
Maury, along those lines, when you are engaged with someone and you're talking to them potentially about who they'd like to meet, how important is it to try to get specifics from them about what they're looking for, and how do you go about doing that?
So I think it's important for 2 reasons. It's important for you to understand your pre-client or the person you're talking about and really getting some knowledge about their company. And that's what they're going to give you when they give you that information. It's just as important to know that when you're making an introduction for them to somebody else. You want to make sure that both parties are going to get something out of that introduction. So the more you know about the person you're talking to, the more you know about the kind of person they want to meet. And when you make that introduction, you're going to make it to somebody who will always take your introductions because they are guided towards them.
Larry,
I'll add to that, actually.
go ahead. Please.
I think it's so important as well, because you don't want to waste people's time. Time is the one thing we all need more of and you can't get back. And so I think being really mindful and listening to what makes sense for introductions for that person is really important, because you don't want to waste anybody's time.
Yeah,
Absolutely right.
Right. Don't make an introduction just to make an introduction to like fill a quota. Okay, I got you to that Northwestern Mutual person. That's not what you want to do. And there is someone that works there named Larry Kaufman. We're not the same people. But I really believe that people have to be more specific and you have to guide them, because a lot of people will say, look, I like middle market company CEOs and CFOs. Thanks for narrowing it down for me. Now I could help you. No, that's not going to do it. Here's 10 companies I'm trying to break into. Here's 10 CEOs and CFOs I want to know. Can you help me? Be specific.
There's a way on LinkedIn that you can search someone's connections based upon a set of criteria. And that's a lot of what I have my team doing that search, but if I'm introduced to somebody that I don't know them or I don't share many mutual connections with them, we'll go through that exercise to see who they know. And I think you can get a pretty good idea when meeting somebody if they're not a business owner, but then they don't have many mutual connections with you, or they don't have many of the people in their network that you'd like to meet. Maybe that's one that you can say, listen, I'm really jammed up right now. Can we push this off? I know, Maury, you're right. You never know, but I think you can do some research and a little bit of due diligence to really get an inclination of who that person does know, and then base your actions on that information.
Well, you got to keep in mind the word that I've heard mentioned so many times this morning, and that word is trust. When you give a good introduction, people will let you give them another introduction. When you make 2 or 3 in a row that have no value to the person you're making them to, seeing your name at the top of an email is not going to be terribly important. But if you've done good and you've made good connections, they're going to open that email every single time.
I'm going to interject one of the questions that came out of the group here that I think is relevant to the course of discussion right now. And that is, someone asked, why would I start introducing people I know to someone I just met? And why would I offer to help someone who I just met? Maybe I'll ask Greg to get your insight on that. There's concern, obviously, from this, and it's probably held by more than one person, is, boy, making connections to someone who I don't have a relationship with, or I'm offering to kind of do this as a pay it forward, is something that a lot of people aren't comfortable with right away.
So there's another dynamic that I didn't mention when I'm looking to make introductions, and that is the characteristics of the personality of the people. I've also added that over time into this. So, I mean, if you're not willing to make an introduction to somebody you just met, and you met them to talk about making introductions, obviously you're not going to grow your network. So, I mean, you have to be able to first decipher whether or not the person you met is somebody that you like their character, or you feel that, you know, this is somebody that if I introduce them to someone else, they're not going to make me look bad. And you can coach that person as well. And I've done that with some people where I've told them, you know, I'm going to make these introductions for you, and I'm going to get both parties to agree to them first. That's another step I've added into it without making blind introductions. I don't believe in blind dating. So, but when I do that, you're going to have to go into this with the mentality of it's all about the other person's agenda. And so you're prepping them to make sure that they're going to go into this with the giving mentality. And I tell them, if you're going to go into it with you're there to get something out of it, I'm not going to make an introduction for you, because it's going to reflect badly on me, and it's going to reflect badly on you, to be honest. So if they get that and they are believers in it, and then I will make the introduction, and I have no problem doing it because I believe they're going to do that. And I will follow up with the people afterwards and make sure that that is what occurred. I also, at some point, sometimes I'll do a 3-point introduction. Now with Zoom, that's become so popular, I will be on the actual introductory call. So I will introduce the parties. I'll explain again why I made the introduction to both of them. And then I will let them take it from there. And then obviously I am seeing what's occurring here, how the conversation's gone. The people both obviously appreciate the fact that I've given my time now to actually be on this call and facilitate it. So that's another additional step that you can take.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. Larry, obviously you've done a lot of instruction and teaching relative to your use of LinkedIn, but have you done a lot of teaching of people in your circle of how to do these kind of connections, make these kind of connections? And how have you seen those people, if you have, leverage it and use it?
Well, actually, Mike Verdon, who's on today's call, is in my book, and he talks about how he kind of saw that in action. And I worked with Mike when he was at a firm, and he's an ex-Secret Service guy, very cool, right? So if anyone's connected, he's connected up to the Oval Office, right? I'm not. But he left his firm and started off on his own. And he and I talked about how he can grow his business, and we talked about connecting and making introductions. And I made a number of those for him. In turn, he's practiced that, you know, of what he saw from me. So leading by example, showing people what you do. I've helped people in transition. I connected them to people who are connectors and givers. And then all of a sudden those people in transition were sad to get a job because they started practicing being a connector. So it helped them in their business career and in their life. But I've helped many people learn how to use LinkedIn, to use making introductions, using an introduction template in the third person, and practicing that and using that process to connect people to people. And it's helped a lot of people I know grow their business, get introduced to key clients. And frankly, my best example of helping others is people in transition have become some of the best clients. So modeling the connecting and introducing and paying it forward has just been incredible. And it's doing that because I want to do it from the heart, but those have become some of my best clients and relationships.
Thanks, Larry. Bill, do you think anyone has the ability to do this? Or does it take a certain type of person? From what your experience has been, can anybody start connecting and making introductions, assuming that they have something of a network, but just the whether it's personality or whatever they might need from a skill set standpoint? Can anybody do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it does start with a network, but that's very easy to get. You may not know business owners right away or your potential client to have that group of people to be able to make introductions to and for, but there's so many opportunities to join networking groups, like BNI or a chamber or the SBAC, where you're going to meet a substantial number of other service providers. And then the question then is, who are your ideal referral sources? Because you can always, once you meet the other service providers and trusted advisors, you can make those introductions. But in terms of a personality trait to be able to do this, I really don't believe that it takes, an extrovert, or it takes an I on the DISC profile, which is a person who's very relationship oriented. It really just involves using your mind to think, okay, this person right here likes to do business with law firms. What managing partners do I know? What partners do I know at law firms if you don't know the managing partners? Or this person over here likes to do business with marketing firms. Okay, what owners of marketing firms do I know? And it just really involves, in my mind, it just involves taking the time to think about who those people are in your network. And Maury at the very beginning talked about putting that list together, and so part of my process, as I believe with all the panelists here, is when we're in a conversation with somebody, we're listening. And if we're not hearing it, we're asking the question of who would be helpful for them to meet. Who are their ideal clients? What sort of issues are they facing in their business that we can support them in solving? Oh, they need a good labor and employment attorney? Great, we got that. But it's about listening to who their ideal clients are and what other issues you can support them in solving. And that way you're going to come up with a large list of people. Or, as Maury also mentioned, it's about doing your due diligence prior to the meeting, already understanding who their potential clients are, and coming into that meeting with, hey, I know you like working with manufacturing companies. Here's 5 people that I know that own $20 million plus manufacturing companies. Would these be good people for you to meet? So I don't think that it takes a certain personality structure. It really just takes the time to put some thought to it.
Thanks, Bill. Tricia, I'm going to ask you a question that's sort of been touched on before, but maybe in a little bit different way. And that is, have you been surprised in your experience of some of the outcomes that have happened through introductions? This idea of you never know what kind of a connection someone might have or what where that might lead.
Yeah, I mean, you never really do know. When you introduce good people, like I said before, you introduce good people to good people, good things are bound to happen. When you're meeting with somebody for the first time, you don't know their background, you don't know their history, you don't know who they know, you don't know, how you can potentially collaborate. So for me, I always try to have a really open mind, listen to what it is that they do, understand how I can help them with what they need now. And then I always think about how can we collaborate in the future, because if we do so and we help each other, then it's going to allow us all to go much further. And, I'll just share this quick little story here. You never know where an opportunity is going to come from. I was introduced to one of the managers over at WeWork, and I mentioned to him, this was years ago, that I would love to collaborate with WeWork. I mean, I was trying every which way to get into WeWork and collaborate with them because they were collaborating with other service providers, not law firms, but other service providers for businesses. And they were creating this WeWork store and having this magazine and all this stuff. And so we're a perfect fit for them just because we help, growing businesses, and we provide a lot of services on fixed fee, and it's attractive to these early stage companies. So I mentioned to this person that I met over at WeWork that I would love to get into their creator magazine and try to collaborate and get into their store. And he emailed me a few weeks later and said to me that they were doing an ad campaign in Chicago, and they were going to highlight some members to partner with to share stories of success and like basically tell WeWork's story, and asked me if I wanted to participate. And so like, had I not had that conversation with him, he never would have thought to even ask me. He asked me, it was like right before I was taking my family of 7 on a family vacation. We were driving across the country to Florida and then taking a ferry over to an island. So it was like the craziest time in my life. And I was pregnant with my 6th baby at the time. But I made it happen, and I went downtown and I did the shoot for a couple of hours. And then, a few months later, I ended up on billboards and on buses and trains all over Chicago. And now we are part of the WeWork store, and we mentor at WeWork Labs, which is their accelerator. And so, had I not just said that one thing to that random person that I met at WeWork, none of that would have happened. And so I just think it's important to have an open mind and just know that you never know where opportunity is going to come from.
Thank you. The last prep question that we have here is for Greg, and it kind of speaks more to the times that we've been living, the times that we're coming out of, and that is with the pandemic ending, how will you continue to use this process? What have you learned through the COVID process and the way that you've made connections that way versus what you see going forward as we return to some level of kind of normal interaction and communication in the way that we were maybe most used to in the past?
I've been thinking a lot about that actually, because, we've all developed new habits now during COVID, and some of them good and some of them not so good. And so how do we combine the good with the not so good to move forward? And, so I was talking a little bit about how I've been doing all of these networking introductory meetings via Zoom, because that's just the way it was the last year and a half. People weren't meeting, and we wanted to keep this moving forward. And so there were some really nice benefits to it. Obviously, the benefits of time, you can do a lot more of them. The benefit of being involved in those meetings in a 3-way meeting, without all the transportation, et cetera. And so I learned to adapt to that. My concern is getting people not to do initial meetings via Zoom, because I think being in front of someone is so much more powerful than doing it by Zoom, the way we have done it. And it has worked, and don't get me wrong, but there's something about being in front of somebody that just develops a different kind of relationship. I think we all know it. You get the nonverbal, which you're not able to get when you're on a Zoom. You're just seeing someone and having them face to face creates a different dynamic. So, I want to be able to blend the two together, but not lose face that we need to get back in front of people and meeting people face to face. And so I think that's going to be an interesting adjustment to see if we can get people to do that. And I'm going to keep working on it, because I just think there's a much deeper, dynamic in that face-to-face relationship.
Thanks, Craig. That covers all of the questions that we had prepared. We've got a few minutes left. If any one of the participants have something that they'd like to ask, please feel free to use the chat function, and we can take a look at them. We certainly can cover a few things here before we're out of time.
Hey, Todd, before we get to that, I'd like to thank you very much for your skills and helping to put this together and really guiding us through this hour of getting the chance to chat with each other. I'd also like to thank the panelists. I think we have a group of people here today that you will never get to see again assembled with the knowledge of the subject matter of paying it forward and asking people those 2 questions: how can I help you and support your company growth? And who do I know that you would like to meet? Everybody from the panels are people who perfected in their own way the process of paying it forward and making connections. And I can't tell you how valuable you are to the group that's here today in terms of learning and seeing practitioners. For myself, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet and see all of you here. I hope that you take my first suggestion, and that's know who's here in the group, make these people work for you, send little things out and notes, and ask for introductions, ask for a chance to meet, because you all have a great deal of value And it's not just what you carry, it's who you know. So thank you for participating. And again, Todd, you've just done an incredible job, and you can read about Todd and his background as well if you go to the roster. If any of you haven't received a roster, send Todd a message asking that he get one to you. It'll tell you about everybody that's at this meeting.
Thanks, Maury.
Any questions? Comments?
Maury, I'll make a comment if I may. Sometimes when you're introducing people or trying to help them with their network, you may not be able to find someone for them right away, but you can do other things for them. So I'll give an example. I met somebody who was trying to figure out what to do for his wife's 40th birthday, and I came up with a great suggestion for him. And then he told me he really wanted to start speaking to promote his business. And I said, well, I'd be glad to hear your speech. I do a lot of speaking myself, and I'll critique it for you. And then when I critiqued it, he liked the suggestions, and I said, how'd you like to come give that at my law firm? And so I was able to help him that way. That resulted in 4 referrals from him. I didn't ask for those referrals, but there are a lot of ways to build trust. And I just wanted to share that. And Maury, I owe that introduction to you, of course. You're the one who made that introduction for me in the first place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add one point, if you guys don't mind? Because I had, from Bill and Maury and Greg and everyone, the one, I did a talk actually on this topic with SBAC about a month ago. But the one thing that we can't forget about is the follow-up. So many people make all these time and effort, and they go out to connect with all these people, and then they just drop the ball on follow-up. So make sure, why do they call the fortunes in the follow-up, right? So make sure if you're going to go through this time and make these effort and leverage this network, you're not too busy. And if you are too busy for the follow-up, then you're better probably not going to make that connection in the first place if you're not going to follow up on it. So I just wanted to throw that out there because that's so key. And I've seen that with so many people work so hard. And then did you follow? Oh, I got to get back to her like in the next week. That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, John, you do an excellent job of this. Your format and the way you're organized in your meetings, wonderful. And John Vagosin, if you don't know John, believe me, he's a treasure to have as a friend and as a collaborator. His reach is quite far into a lot of different places that I think all of us would have some value in.
Maury, may I add a compliment to you as well as John Vagosin? We're all talking about business, but I have you, Maury, to thank for introducing me to John, who reintroduced me to a gentleman that I'd met when I was 10 or 12 years old, Alan Schwartz. And there was nothing business about it. It was all about creating new friendships with people that I admire. And so, John, thank you publicly. And Maury, thank you for introducing me to John.
I think, Jim, that you bring up such a great point that this isn't just about business. I think, and Larry's illustrated this with some of his great stories, is that there's so many other ways that just being out there to serve others will eventually support you back as well. And it's not just getting a new client, but it could be, Larry, I think you have a great story about your son wanting to go to a Blackhawks game. And instead you found someone that got you to meet like Jonathan Toews and be in the locker. I mean, it's incredible the things that can happen when you serve as a connected connector and work to uplift your community and support others. It's just really incredible to see how it can work.
Folks, thank you so much for your time, for your conscious listening. It's been a great session. I see so many faces that I really honor and really respect. And it's great to have you with us today. Please connect to the new people that you've met. Offer your hand, offer suggestions, offer help, offer support. That's what this is all about. It's meeting people and making and taking advantage of new people. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Maury.
Thank you, Maury.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maury.
Thank you
Peace
all.
to Cindy.
Thank you.
And all
Thank you, guys.
here for help.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.